So for those who don't know me, I'm going to be asking a lot of questions and engaging people and asking you to talk. So don't be quiet. You got questions and you want to share things, please do.
Hey,
What's going on, Gordon?
just doing what we do. Trying not to screw up, maybe grow out a little hair.
There we go. Try to keep as much as you can. Slowly losing mine. It's all right.
We can wait. Wait a couple more minutes. Fabio, how many people? I see 36 more people haven't joined yet that RSVP'd.
Wow.
So just give them
Maybe they're
another minute and then we can just get started.
Sure. Maybe they're catching it on YouTube.
Possible.
I'm getting coffee, so I'm not leaving. I'll be right back.
Thanks, Oscar.
All right.
You're welcome.
Oh, hi, Denise.
Hi.
Oh, I see a bunch of faces. Hi. Hi, Ksenia. Hi, Teresa. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Neil.
Hi, Gordon. I can't see everyone's names. Ah, Angelique. Very cool. A lot of. Well, I guess, you know what? I guess we can get started, and the other people, the other 36 who RSVP'd, I guess they'll come in when they come in. So Fabio, if you can go
Yeah.
ahead and watch that would be
Yeah,
great.
I'm paying attention to it.
No worries. Well, let's rock and roll then. Well, welcome everybody. I am James Chickardonis, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Lee invited me, and this is kind of I kind of miss being at more networking events, and virtual ones are pretty awesome. For those who don't know me, who is this guy? I'm James Chickardonis. I'm also known here at How to Manage a Small Law Firm, which is where I work, as the Salesosaurus, because no one can say my last name. So it was much easier to say. It looks and kind of sounds like a dinosaur. I have been in sales for many, many years. It's getting to decades at this point. I was an Army officer for about 14 years, leading troops on the weekend while building my sales career. And so at one point when I was both a solo coach before HTM and a salesperson, I would tell people all the time, because I was also a teacher, I went to school to be a teacher, that I could, if I can train 5-year-olds to paint and I can train soldiers to go to war, I'm pretty sure I can teach you how to sell, right? Been selling for a long time and coaching a lot of people for a long time. Worked in finance, technology, startups. I've been chairman for a bunch of different boards here in Central Virginia, where I live in Charlottesville.
Gingerbread man in my room. I'll get it down from.
Fabio, can you? Oh, good.
Okay, it's gonna be like, wait, what questions are being asked? So yeah, I've been doing this for a really long time. I spend most of my weeks coaching and training salespeople and leaders. That is pretty much all I've done. I've led, trained teams of 100 and 200 in the Army. I've trained classrooms of, 5-year-olds to 12-year-olds that are, 30 or 40 apiece. I would say that's actually harder than probably training the 100 or so soldiers. I don't know if we have any veterans in here, but anyone that has can probably know it's a lot of fun to try and corral a bunch of kids on how to paint and draw and do all those wonderful things. So we are here today to learn about how to build emotional intelligence in ourselves and by proxy our team, right? That is a big thing for any leader to be able to do, is going to be able to understand what's going on with their team and use whatever is happening with them to be able to get them to perform. So let's start with a little question, right? What the heck is emotional intelligence? Let me hear it. I already warned y'all, I'm going to be asking you to ask questions and to either put it in the chat or just shout it out. What do you think emotional intelligence is?
I think it's
being aware of your emotions so that you control them and they don't control you.
Okay, like that. Reading the room, very good. What else?
Understanding how what you're saying is affecting the people that you're talking to.
Bingo. I love it. All of these are good answers, right? The highfalutin answer is basically the ability to recognize, understand, manage emotions, both your own and others, and to use the awareness to guide thinking, behavior, and relationships effectively. Why do leaders need EQ?
So they can better relate to their staff and their clients.
Okay. Better relate to their staff and their
Well,
clients. What else?
be better leaders to our team and make sure that our reactions are proportionate and on a higher level versus a lower level.
Yeah. Do people like working with leaders they can't trust?
No.
No.
Yeah. In general, no. Right. Whether, and for me in sales, it's actually probably one of those things that we focus on a lot more than a lot of other, job titles and industries, right? EQ is one of those when you're in sales, a lot of the times we just kind of tell people, hey, people like you should get into sales. And then we kind of throw them out there and we hope that they figure it out. But when it comes to developing any sort of salesperson, which all of you are because you're all networking, you're all running your own businesses, you need to develop your own self-leadership first. And to build trust with yourself, build confidence in yourself, you've got to go to some of those dark places within you and understand what makes you tick before you can start working with other people. It's sad to say, but I would say 95% of the people that you talk to have done very little introspective work at any time. EQ is very much about looking inward and finding out why you do what you do, why you feel what you feel, and that can be very, very uncomfortable for people. And as we sort of go through the different skill sets today, I think you're going to recognize behaviors in people that you didn't quite know what they were lacking, and then you're going to know what they're lacking. When I first got into sales many, many years ago, a lot of this came naturally. My dad has been in sales for 40 years. He's old man salesosaurus. And so I think I picked up a lot from him very naturally. But this was often just something that we didn't really talk about. We didn't really train on. And so you get pulled into this sort of career by just, emulating and mimicking other people. It was really great when I started, really dialing in my own trade craft, which is what sales is a skill set like any other, realizing that this was just another area for me to improve on. So I want to encourage everybody, even after today, pick up some books, continue working this skill set and building it up because it will pay off in big ways for you, right? Particularly when it comes to networking, particularly when it comes to sales, and particularly when it comes to just having really, really awesome relationships with the people you care about in your life. You're going to find that building this within yourself as a leader is also going to make it very easy. It's going to improve your ability to make decisions and clarify communication with your team. Because most of the time when we suffer from really bad EQ scenarios or we run into really bad relationships with our team, so a lot of it's miscommunication. It's not the way we want to come off to people. Two books I would recommend. Howard Gardner's Multiple Intelligences. That's more of an educational theory book, but it's a really good one. Way back when, we used to believe there was just IQ. And Howard Gardner's logic was that we have actually 9 different types of intelligence, EQ being one of them, intelligence being another, but there were other ones that you could be good at, that you could develop if you wanted to. And then a lot of what you're going to be hearing from me today comes from one of my favorite ones, which is Travis Bradberry and Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Has anyone read that one? Some, maybe, not so much. Been a minute. That's okay. Let's get past just reading the room, right? Someone mentioned that before, right? How do we read the room? And this is, and it's important because I think that by going through these different skill sets, it's going to give you tools to be intentional with your team, but also the ability to model the behavior that you want. And also, if you have anyone in your life or on your team that is slightly on the neurodivergent side, giving them structure is super helpful. And if you don't know how to give that structure to somebody who takes in information differently, it can be really hard to make them effective on your team. So we're going to go through 4 different skill sets. But before we go through those skill sets, I want you to take
Walking? Yeah,
60 seconds to ask yourself a question. What do you want people to feel like when they work with you? If you're driving, it's okay. I don't expect you to stop and try and write this down.
Comfortable?
Confident.
Comfortable, confident. What else?
Motivated.
Motivated, respect, understanding, empathy, trusted. Why do those things matter to you?
Because that's what you want to feel when you're working with someone.
Sure. That's what you want to feel from you, from other people. Why else?
Feels confident that you're with an organization that has things under control.
Yeah. Would we say it probably makes it easier to build your network faster? Find some better referrals, maybe convert some sales better?
Invigorated.
Yeah. We put this stuff out there because we want to see it come back to us. A lot of people don't take a second to really think about, how do I want people to view me, to work with me, right? How do I come off to those people? And this leads us into sort of that first skill set, which is self-awareness. All right. If you don't notice it first, others will notice it for you. All right. Now, some of you are like, well, I'm self-aware. I know who I am. Yes, you do. But most of the time when it comes to what we're talking about here for emotional intelligence, you're not always cognizant of the energy you're giving off. Can anyone think of a leader that they worked with, or a time in the past where they were with someone that was on their team, and you could feel the negative vibrations from them?
Sure.
We hopefully don't have any employees like that, but we know there's some of them, right? They kind of it kind of comes off them. Well, that can be you if you're not in control of these things, if you're not aware enough about the way that your emotion sort of trickles out. And as leaders, we are not thermostats. I'm sorry, we are not thermometers, we're thermostats, right? Thermometers take a temperature. Thermostats, we set the temperature. And as leaders, we have to set that tone. And if we're not aware of the energy and what we're putting out, that can be a big problem. Self-awareness includes emotional literacy. What are you feeling? There are, I think, over 7,000 words to describe emotions. And most of the time, you will use a really simple word like sad, bad, mad, happy, but not really define what all those different, like, what does that really emotion mean? If someone says that they're happy, I might say, when you say happy, what do you mean by that? I might try and get them to use a bigger, different word because I want to know more specifically what they're feeling. Do they feel exuberant? Do they feel excited? Do they feel joy? There's so many better words to define it. And most of the time, if we as leaders can't really recognize those emotions, it's going to be, both in ourselves, it's going to be hard to recognize them in others. Recognizing your own triggers. Who here gets triggered by, slow Wi-Fi? I do, right? We all get triggered by slow Wi-Fi, but there are other things in your life that probably trigger you to be a little bit more angry, to create a reaction you may not actually really want to have. Does anyone have that? Does anyone have like there's one thing just for whatever reason just drives you nuts? For
Yep.
me, it's if my wife's trying to talk to me while I'm on the phone, I just get like an unrealistically amount of anger. Like it's like my primary way I take in information, and I have to like calm myself down. Sorry, Dan, I think I cut you off.
Oh, no, I guess my biggest trigger is when like in our system, records are very important. And when something is supposed to be in the file and I go there and it's just an empty folder. And inevitably somebody on the phone is asking me a question about that.
Oh, I bet that would be triggering.
Yep.
That would yeah, that can be one of those things. I told you to do it this way, right?
Yep.
Who else has that thing that you just grit your teeth when you have to talk to people about? Oh, I forgot I'm with a bunch of monks right now. No one ever gets upset.
I have one non-work related, but when my son stands right behind me quietly without saying a word, I can't control myself. It creates like an anxiety and it triggers me so much that I can just turn around and almost like slap him. Like I can't tolerate it. That's so strange.
That's probably something you want to explore, right?
I know.
So
Yes, go to
along with
therapy.
improving that emotional literacy, recognizing your triggers, what sets you off, and something as simple as forgetting to put things into those share folders might make you potentially get really mad at someone at the office. Now, if we look at that thing, even though you've trained that person multiple times to do that thing, will yelling at them improve their ability to do that work?
I can say no.
I can say confidently no, right?
Not
That's
so
not going to
far.
improve anything.
I'm not giving
Right?
up yet, but so far it hasn't worked.
If there's one phrase I want you to take away from today, people do things for their reasons, not your reasons.
Mhm.
It's true in sales, and it's true in networking, and it's true in relationships. It's true in just about every other way, right? Understanding your triggers so that you don't send the wrong message that doesn't align with what they want can be one of the easiest friction points for you to solve within your business. The other thing is understanding your values. Most of the time when we get really, really upset with somebody or something, it's because something is compromising a core value of ours. How many of you have gone through and really dialed in your core values? Your personal core values? Take some time to really think about it. For me, it's altruism, love, and patience, right? These three things are like, they are burned into me, and I know what they mean to me. And when I get particularly upset, it's usually because one of those things is being compromised in some way. And it's really, really hard to be able to lead people when you're not aware of the values that tend to get compromised, that can cause the reactions you're looking for. You can understand how understanding your values and recognizing your triggers can really build your ability as a leader to handle situations better. And the last thing is knowing your story, like knowing the story that you're telling yourself. A lot of the times the stories we tell ourselves we use to protect ourselves are often our jailers, right? Like that it really becomes something that keeps us from doing the big important thing. And so there's always stories that we're telling ourselves that get in the way of recognizing our triggers, recognizing what's getting in the way of things. And so you have to know those things, right? If you're not sure of someone's intent, right? That little voice in the back of your head starts to interpret it for you, right? It's very easy for you to let that subconscious start telling you a story. Oh, they didn't invite me to that thing, they must hate me. Clearly, that's what it was. It's not that somebody forgot to send an invite or someone wasn't thinking about you. That can be hard. We all care about what other people think of us. We just can't let it dictate our behaviors. And half the time when I'm coaching leaders or executives and they're like, I think so and so hates me. That's like, that's your staff? Yeah. Have you asked them? And they're like, no. Why don't we ask them? they sound like they're upset, find out what's going on. We've got to be able to model that behavior to the people we're talking to. So here's the first skill I want you to take away from today. All right. This is called the name it to tame it. All right. The way this works is that for you to actually be able to build self-awareness, you need to be comfortable labeling an emotion in front of you. All right. I put this emotion wheel up here to kind of highlight what I talked about before with emotional literacy. All right. When you're looking at the emotions, they usually break out into all sorts of other emotions. And you need to be able to know when you're seeing someone bewildered. If we look at this thing right here and we say bewildered, it's also going to come across as looking confused, and it also comes out as looking scared, right? So there's some like core emotions that you can start to understand from people, and you can read them better, right? If you think about someone, maybe you get really upset when you see someone being stupid, right? Well, if they're being really stupid, they may be depressed, they may be lonely, they may be bored. Ultimately, they may be sad, right? That emotional that emotional literacy is going to help you as a leader, because you're going to be able to recognize some of those emotions. You don't really understand where they're coming from, but understand where they're coming from and why someone might be feeling that.
Does this wheel
Acknowledging the
go?
emotion.
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
go ahead.
Is there like a little hand raised somewhere? Or do you just, like, if you have a
There
question?
is, I think there is at the bottom.
Okay, sorry, I was just gonna ask, do you read this in from the outside in or from the inside out?
Either way, right? I usually start from the outside in. If I'm trying to read emotions of other people, I would start from the outside in. But if I'm trying to read emotions for myself, I might try and define it better. So if I'm really, really mad, I'm going to try and get specific with it, because to name it is to tame it. And the idea behind that is that you're, one, acknowledging the emotion in front of you, and you're giving it some space between you and the feeling. It's giving you a chance to do something with that emotion. Helps you regulate rather than react. Does that make sense to everybody? Can anyone pinpoint a time where they were mad, sad, scared, peaceful, joyful, powerful, any of those center ones? And if you think back at it, could you define it even better? Could you narrow it down? Could you use a better word to define it? You don't have to say anything, but through a show of hands or whatnot, what does it feel like when you start to define it? You can almost feel it start to neutralize a little bit. What you're experiencing when you start to define that emotion is something that you can use as a leader, and both, as a leader and in sales, right? You're going to learn a little bit later here about how when you're labeling emotions in front of people, it calms the situation. I've trained customer service teams about how to do that and point out emotions people are having. People feel better about it because most of the time people are not aware of the emotions that they're feeling. All right, I see some hands and thumbs up. Do people have questions? No. You cannot change what you cannot acknowledge. The first step in building any emotional intelligence is understanding those things about yourself, being self-aware of what you're feeling at any given time. You've got to master the inner world before you can master the outer world. Treat emotions as data. A lot of the times when I train salespeople, we're trying to build their EQ. I'm trying to get them out of whenever someone says, well, I'm empathetic. I said, what do you mean by that? Well, I feel their feelings. I said, that's not being empathetic. Empathetic is recognizing the emotions in front of you and understanding what it is. So if I'm in sales and I'm working with somebody and I see them as being really like, they're really, really sad because of something we're talking about, I know sad people or people in victim mindsets don't make decisions. They won't buy. So I need to empower them. So I need to know, I need to recognize that emotion. I need to know what's in front of me, and I need to be able to try and move them into a more empowered dynamic. Right? That's why this matters. For those who might be on the neurodivergent side, right? A simple way you could take away from this is just recognizing your sensory needs, right? If you sometimes recognizing your emotion might be a little harder, but recognizing your sensory need might be easier. So if it's too loud, you might need to move somewhere else. And once things have gotten quiet, you can try and work on what emotion's in front of you. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. Everyone's like, I must be doing such a great job. No one's got any questions. All right.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Did we have another question?
Sorry, no.
Okay. So next one is self-management. So with self-awareness comes self-management. So difference between these two things, right? Self-awareness is knowing, understanding what's going on with you internally. Self-management is when you're doing something about it, right? So your emotions are always valid. Let me be very clear. Your emotions are always valid. Sometimes when I'm coaching people, like, you're just telling me to let this thing go. No, your emotions are valid, but your behavior is your responsibility. As leaders, we are always in charge of the behavior that we are coming across to with other people. And a lot of us don't always think about that. Sometimes it's easy. The easy thing sometimes is just to yell at people, right? That's the easy thing. The harder thing is to respond accordingly, right? React is, we usually are in one of two ways, react or respond. Reacting is just fast, emotional, protective, right? You're doing something to me. Some stimuli has come in front of me, and now I'm feeling something, and I don't have the self-management to control it. Now, everyone was just telling me how they wanted people to feel empowered and strong and comfortable around you. Do you feel strong and comfortable with people that react crazy?
No.
No, not at all, right? Self-management ultimately is about you being able to do something with the emotions you have. It's creating some space and pausing. We talk about armor behavior. Some of you might be familiar with this term, some of you may not, right? Common armor behavior is defensiveness, it's perfectionism, it's humor, masking as comfort, shutting down, shifting blame. These are what people do when they're not well self-managed. All right. You do this, you have your own things that you do. You're probably sitting here thinking right now about employees that you work with or staff or loved ones that you work with, and these are coming right in front of you, right? Tell me, what is your default armor behavior? Be honest with yourself. Which one of these feels like you? Do you beat yourself up because you're not perfect? Do you make funny little jokes when you're uncomfortable? In the army, I had lots of, we had smilers. Smilers were people when they're getting yelled at, they can't help but smile and start laughing, and it makes everything worse, right? Do you shut down? Shutting down is a common one. You probably have a loved one that has that behavior of shutting down. Think about that behavior that's probably not serving you. It is most likely not serving you. Most definitely not serving you. Then ask yourself, what value is it protecting? Do you see how these threads start to connect with each other? If we're not self-aware, it becomes really hard to self-manage. So think about the behavior that you have. What core value could be getting compromised in the situation that you're with? Who here knows they get defensive?
James, I have a question.
What you got?
Well, in situations that I've experienced before, a lot of times what I'll do is if it's a confrontational situation, I will receive the information, take it, ponder it, and I think I respond very well in that regard because I always want to respond with understanding, comprehensiveness, and not reacting. However, at the end of it, then literally maybe 24 to 48 hours, when I'm thinking about it, then I begin to spiral, and it'll either evoke a negative reaction or an assumptive reaction, because then I start to get a little angry, and then I'll start to close in. Whether I'll either tell myself, well, man, this is where you could have done better. Why didn't you do this better? So I'll start beating myself up. How would that be construed as, or how would you identify that as in reference to what you're saying?
Yeah, so there's a shield behavior there that you are essentially, you're not letting this thing go, right? You're not letting this thing go, even though you've actually mulled it over. You probably at one point were really fine with it. So I guess the question I might ask you to kind of uncover that a little bit is, what is it? Was there a time where, people wouldn't let you let something go?
Well, I think if I reflect back, and I think a lot of times, and as I just do, self-reflection, just early on in my careers that I've had, it's always been where I was okay. Well, my predecessors had more opportunities than I have had, even though I was in the same position, and so I always had this feeling of less than. And so I always had to always be that person fighting his way back up, fighting his way back up, fighting his way back up in order to show myself, to prove myself. And only to the point of I guess for lack of better terms, the recognition that I gravitated or that I desired would be like not there. So I guess that's something that replays in my mind when circumstances or situations begin to happen. And so it's almost as if like I'm reliving again and again.
Yeah, so there's a part of you that doesn't feel like you're good enough, right? That is being triggered through all this. So what courageous behavior could you use to replace that? What's a more empowering thing that you could do when you're starting to feel that? So now that we've named it, right? Name it to tame it. We know that part of this comes down to you not feeling good enough. What's a behavior that we could try and use to interrupt that pattern?
Affirmations, maybe self-affirmations.
Yeah. Absolutely. Never shy away from an affirmation. I got lots of them, right? I used to sound like a crazy person driving to different sales calls because in my car I'd say, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, I'm really good at this, I know what I'm doing, I'm wonderful, I'm awesome. Not to get to buff my ego up, but because I'm trying to talk to my subconscious and really speak to it and really let it and just drown out that negative, that what we call ants, automatic negative thoughts, right? That is what that intrusive thought, when you're like, I just want to push that person down the stairs, right? That negative voice that comes in, right? Those are natural. Your brain just does it because your brain has been trained over 2 million years to always look for the negative to keep you safe. So sometimes we have to acknowledge to ourselves, hey, thank you, brain, for trying to keep me safe, but I'm not in any danger. I am, in fact, really good at this. And I am good at this, and I don't have anything to prove to anybody else. So Jeffrey, thank you for sharing. What I would also suggest you do is what I call power pausing. So this is an old acronym that you can use to kind of help yourself. So first is to stop, pause, slow your breathing. All right. Slow your breathing. Most of the time when all of you are running into clients that may have money objections, or you have clients that are having big feelings in the middle of the work that you're doing, most of the time it's because they're breathing shallow and they're getting a lot of oxygen restricted to their brain and they're starting to panic. Just like for you, when you're having a big emotion that you're trying to manage, you need to stop, pause, and slow down. Deep breaths, right? Box breathing, whatever you want to do. Name the feeling, all right? Name the feeling that you're feeling when that comes up. Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel angry? Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel depressed, right? And observe the story that you're telling yourself. What is it that I'm telling about this situation that has me feeling this kind of way? And then reframe, be curious. The easiest way to get rid of negative thoughts or to regulate the emotions that you have is to question it. Is that really true? Right? Is that thing that my brain is telling me, is that really true? And then the final thing is to act with like intention? What is a behavior that as a leader you would be really, really proud of? Take one of the scenarios you've had with a client, with an employee or a colleague recently, and take yourself out of it. Zoom out. Imagine you're like an alien overlooking and you're seeing this scenario play out. And you're not you, and you don't know this colleague, but you know what a really good leader would look like. What would you want in that scenario for that leader to do? What would a really good leader do in the scenario in your head from something that's happened before? Take a couple seconds to think about that.
I think one way would be number one is to understand exactly what the scenario is taking place. So relate to the individual or the actual individual that maybe has caused a ruckus. Search search for a reason why, what's going on behind that. So I guess what comes to mind is literally like peeling an onion back, because there's layers as to why this person may be reacting the way they are. Discover that why, and then after understanding, you know, why that happened, and then now dealing with the actual behavior or the response, the negative reaction that individual is having. So being able to respond to it accordingly with understanding, but also but also setting the precedent. Like, this is what the expectations are. This is what you want to reach to. This is what you want to get to. This is what the expectations are. Your reaction to that could be validated, of course, maybe because it's out of the ordinary as far as how you're feeling. There's a reason why you're feeling the way you are, but that's not the way you respond to it accordingly. So I guess that's something there's a lot that's going around my mind. So something to that extent.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. Who else? Share an experience if you have one that's come to mind. I have had in my Army career, I've had commanders come in and call me everything but a child of God, right? And one of my favorite sort of like very disarming phrases, right? Because at the time, early in my Army career, I was also teaching a lot of really young kids, so it was very hard to get under my skin. So a lot of these leaders are having big feelings and they're not always aware of how they're coming across to people. I would just simply ask, are you okay? It's a very disarming phrase when someone has just sat there and sort of berated you over something that, especially if you're like, this is really trivial. I was on an economic board here in Virginia, and we had public comment. And I remember a gentleman coming up, and he once again also berated everything that we were doing. And at the end of the meeting, my board members were like, "Man, that guy really gave you a tongue lashing. What do you think we should do about it?" I said, "I think I'm going to invite him to coffee." And they were like, "What? You're invite him to coffee? The guy like hates you, hates your guts." I said, "Yeah, but I mean, what behavior would I want as a leader for someone who did that? What is going to be so disarming to somebody that I'm trying to build a relationship with, that could change that person's behavior?" And so I reached out to him and said, "I'd really like to take you out to coffee and let's have a conversation." And I'm going to continue the story as we go because it has a lot of really good emotional intelligence pieces to it, right? Which leads to my next skill set, right? Which is relationship management. Trust is built slowly. You can't force trust. You can be very quick with it. You can start trying to you can try and speed it up. But at the end of the day, you need to be patient with yourself when it comes to trying to build relationships and manage relationships with other people. For those of you who are master networkers, the same thing is true. You're not people are not going to refer a lot of business to you till they get to know you, till they understand what you do. So relationship management is leading the space between people, how we communicate, resolve conflict, support each other, move forward together when things get messy. Trust is built in small moments, right? It's built in small moments. What I mean by that is being thoughtful for the people that, work in your office and remembering things like their birthday and their big events. Small moments are when you screw, maybe it's a small moment in the sense that, like, we screw up, and it would be very easy for me to just say, they'll be fine, we'll get another client. But it's reaching out and following up and remembering them, right? I built trust with a colleague of mine over 12 years ago. As a salesperson, we had signed up to create a white label technology solution. And I had an IT team that said they were working on it, And then we found out the CTO had lied to me, that they hadn't done one thing about it. And these people expected the entire project delivered and launched on Monday. So I could have sent him an email and said, sorry, everything's screwed. But instead, I booked a plane ticket and I flew down and I told them what happened in person, right? I laid out other options. I had actually reached out to 3 other companies that I had worked with in the past that could do the work that we failed to do, and offered to connect them with either one of them. I still know Bob today, and Bob even at one point sent me shares of his company, right? Even after I left that company, right? Relationship management is building that trust and being in line with the values that you have, even when things get messy. Trust is built by building boundaries, being very clear with what you won't do. Your reliability, right? Are you reliable? Are you accountable? It's not just enough to be reliable that you're going to be, that you're going to follow through with the things that you're going to do, but you hold yourself accountable to them. Do you have integrity? Are you non-judgmental? And then finally, are you generous? Are you generous with the things that those people need? Consistent care and clear expectations, right? It's people, what is it, the old Dale Carnegie phrase, people don't know how much you care till you show them, right? You've got to show them through that consistent behavior. It's one of my favorite things. One of the favorite things I miss about being stuck behind a desk all day and not being able to network as much as I used to is just being able to connect people over and over and over again, and trying to call people on their birthday and sending them messages and finding referrals and giving them to people, right? That's an easy way to really build relationships very quickly. And then clear expectations. I've had very hard conversations with people in my network. I'm like, I won't refer people to you. And they'll be like, why? Because the last time I did, you destroyed another relationship of mine because of the way you all acted, right? Getting clear with what we expect from each other alleviates a lot. And as leaders, modeling the behavior you want from others, right? That's a big part when it comes to really working with your team and making sure that everyone is behaving the way that you want. You've got to model the behavior. In my Army days, my greatest compliments came from commanders who, like colonels and generals, that would be like, I can always tell which soldiers work for Lieutenant T because they're always smiling. It doesn't matter what we're doing. They could be cleaning latrines and they're smiling and they're having a good time because we set the culture. Your emotional culture is contagious. I had to have my soldiers do a lot of cruddy things, but because I cared about them, I showed consistent care, I had clear expectations, we work hard, we play hard, they were always willing to step up and really, step into the big projects that we had. The skill set that I want you to take away from this, right? Clear is kind, right? An acronym you can remember, some of my HCM people are probably familiar with this because Oscar's a big fan of it, right? Is COIN. When you're giving feedback, when you're getting clear with somebody, context, observation, impact, and next step. Bring up something or an event that happened when you're trying to talk to somebody about someone. Let's say, and you can use this in any part of your life, someone, really upset your wife. right? Maybe your brother-in-law or your brother, my brothers tend to do that from time to time, right? I have to bring it up to him. I say, hey, remember at the barbecue we had last weekend? I noticed that you really didn't care about my wife's allergies. And as a result, I got a lot of shit for that. And that wasn't really fun. So in the future, what can we do to make it easier so that you don't cross contaminate all the food and make a bad time for everybody? This is a very easy grounding technique to kind of help people recognize, like, get clarity around something that you're observing. A lot of us will let things slide, and that's where your relationships start to fall apart. We start to make assumptions, right? Clarity reduces conflict. Clarity reduces conflict. And emotions guide communication. If someone's having a really hard time, I'm going to get clarity around it. I'm not going to make an assumption about what that person is feeling. When I'm talking to someone about communicating the impact, I might ask some questions, be like, hey, why did you do that? What was going on? Can you tell me a little bit about what was happening? Because it opens up such a much stronger, more dynamic conversation. Has anyone had a really hard event that they weren't that they've struggled with trying to get clear with somebody or to talk to them about?
James, I'll be honest with you. One, you because you mentioned wife about someone offending one of your brother-in-law, your brothers offending your wife, but or not making it easy. But what if you work with your wife and you're working together in that situation? Because I can remember countless times that my wife and I, maybe because whether I didn't bring in enough sales or there was an expectation that I thought she was going to do something. So, like, how does this, you know, when I love the acronyms that you're bringing in, but how do you cross that into the relationship with your wife, and so you're not sounding like you're becoming, I guess, a psychologist and trying to not to say because
No, that's a really good
it's a
question.
slippery slope.
So when it comes to personal relationships, especially spouses, especially if you're mixing business together, you need to, one, create space for each other to be intentional. So my wife and I have a relationship meeting once a week. It is a meeting. It's not a date night. It is a meeting. It is Sunday mornings with coffee, and we go over all the important things. And we use some of this to go over things we might have been upset about with each other throughout the week.
Really, a
Like
weekly relationship meeting.
Yeah, we air grievances. Like, we just get clear with it and we say, and the reason it works is because we know from deep, like at the core level, that we each love each other and we each care about each other. Right. And sometimes we have to call that out. If you're using something like this or some sort of acronym, just say, hey, I know you didn't mean to do this, but it really made me feel like this. Right. And just getting really clear with them about it. If it's in the moment, if someone's really upset, one of the things that my wife and I will do, especially if they're really frustrated about something, maybe it's not at me, maybe it is at me, I'll say something like this, like, hey, it looks like this is really upsetting to you. It sounds like you're having a really hard time. Do you want to vent? Do you want some advice? Do you want me to try and fix it? Or do you need some space? That's where you kind of combine self-management and relationship management at the same time by pointing it out for your partner. Sort of, what do you need? If you just want to vent, I can be your vent partner. If you just want to yell at me about something, then yell at me, right? Or do you want me to fix it? Is there something you want me to improve? And then let's get clear about it. Let's get seriously clear about what you want from me. We try not to let things fester. Call it out, get clear with it sooner, and create intentional spaces for yourself to be able to talk about those things, or it's just going to bubble and it's going to create the worst relationships possible. My family law people probably know what I'm talking about, right? When it comes to the people that you see, right? People are holding those things in. And by the way, going back just a couple slides to self-management. Self-management is not about suppressing your emotions. It's about embracing them. It's about being honest with them and clarifying them so that you can do something about it. Some people get really mad. They're like, James, you always let everything roll off your back. You never get mad. I said, I do get mad. I just let it go very quickly. I might de-intensify that emotion with a different word. I might, if someone says you're, someone asked me, they were really mad about this whole fiasco we had at one of our community events. And they're like, James, aren't you mad? How can you not be mad? I said, I'm peeved. Peeved is a very, it's a silly word. It helps de-intensify an emotion, right? So what words and emotions can you use to de-intensify the ones that you're having? Does this help? Is this helpful for people? Do other people have other scenarios where it's kind of difficult for them to get clarity and to really manage the relationships they have with other people?
I'm
Yeah.
getting great nuggets off this.
Awesome. And
Now,
if people have, if you have something else, here's the time to talk about it now.
I'm trying to think about how I would modify my own communication skills to incorporate some of these things. It's a learned process, I suppose.
Yeah. What skill, what are you trying to improve?
Well, I suppose, to match expectations to the people you're working with without getting frustrated if they don't meet them, not necessarily knowing what they are, or maybe not having the same level of aptitude with a particular project.
Go back to the original thing I said, people do things for their reasons, not your reasons. Right. And that whether you like it or not, that still applies to the people you work with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not, if you want to use something like this coin technique, right? It's giving the context, it's giving that observation that I noticed you're not really motivated by this. And the impact is I don't know if you really care about it. And I want to see how do you feel about this project?
How do people react to that? Do you ever get a pushback where people are like, don't try to psychoanalyze me, or don't, it seems like a lot of people I could think about who I would try something like this would immediately be threatened by the emotional intimacy of sort of pushing into those types of spaces.
And why do you think they would feel that way?
Probably because they're afraid, or there's something they're fearful of exposing,
Sure. So knowing that, right? That's exactly what we're talking about, kind of separating space. If I'm getting a reaction from somebody that I don't quite understand, my sales class know my old acronym or my old phrase, get curious, not furious. If someone's getting really mad at me, you have to realize that almost everything is not about you. And you got to kill that part of you that wants to get defensive. And you got to say, ooh, okay, information. I'm empathetic. I realize you're very defensive about this thing. Why are they being defensive? What have I accidentally compromised in this person? And how do you take that temperature down? Right? Is to ask questions. Questions are a very natural way to reduce anxiety in other people. And if you're worried about asking a feeling question, they're getting really defensive and they're you're trying to psychoanalyze me. If they say something like that, like my response would be, when you say I'm psychoanalyzing you, what do you mean? I'm trying to get clear about why you're not as motivated about this project. And we're going to go over some of these techniques here in a second when we come to social, the next one. So stick with me. We'll come back to this one. Any other questions on this particular skill? Does everyone understand how that relationship management is an effort? It's the small things you do. It's getting clear with people on expectations. It's that consistent care and that clear expectation. It's going to matter when it comes to stepping up as a leader and building your team. Hello. Somebody said something. Silence is consensus. We'll move on to the next one. So the last one is social awareness. All right. Empathy is not fixing. So be very clear with that. Your empathy is about understanding someone else's experience. This is really hard for everybody because a lot of you are always think if you haven't really done enough of that mindset work, you're always going to assume people are doing things to you instead of realizing they're doing it for them, right? There's something that they're feeling and they're having to let out of them, right? When you understand that and someone starts coming at you with, you know, a lot of vigor and emotion, you can use a technique. Oh, is there another question? No, we'll come back. A technique that I learned many years ago. I did a 5-week study abroad in India, studying Buddhist art in the Jammu Kashmir region of India, which is up in the north. And I got to hang out with a bunch of monks, right, in these monasteries. And we got to ask them a lot of different questions. And one of the things I asked them, I said, how do you all like not get mad? They got tourists here that are just assholes. Like, how do they not get frustrated with these people? And this monk had said something to me that really resonated with me that I've kept with me for many years. And I teach it to executives all the time, which is when someone is being really rude, angry, condescending, mean, whatever emotion it is to imagine them as a small child, like a toddler. And not in a derogatory way, not in a demeaning way. That's not the intention that they're saying. But the idea is to remember that they are having a big feeling and they don't quite know how to handle it. So just like you would if you were talking to one of your kids, now you're not going to patronize them. That's not going to make the situation better. But what it does is it creates that separation, that space from that emotion that someone's talking to you with to help you realize, okay, this person's having a hard time. How do I help that person? How do I help make this relationship a little bit more clear? What do they not understand about this situation that I could clarify for them? And that includes even those people who you're like, I'm just going to have to let you go because you're a crazy asshole, right? Like, I don't get mad with people. It takes a lot to get me mad. At some point, we just have to take action. You're not willing to do the thing that I asked you to do, so we got to move on. Generally, there's 3 levels of listening. When it comes to social awareness, we're trying to better understand people's cues around us. This is where we get into a lot of body language and mirroring and things like that. But when we talk about social awareness, we're focusing on a couple different, well, I should say there's 3 levels of listening. One is listening to reply. We all know that person, right? The person who's not thinking, they're just going to say something. Those are the really bad salespeople who they don't ask you a question when you give them an objection. They just try and sell you it harder. But don't you really want this thing? Right? It doesn't help. Then there's listening to understand. That's listening to actually understand the other person's agenda. Why, like trying to understand why this person's asking you these things. And the last one is listening for feelings and energy. Generally, this is where I try and take most executives. You want to be listening for why people are talking, like how people are bringing their problems, their issues to you. And sort of one of those advanced sales skills I work on with people is really taking time to label emotions in front of them, right? If your client is really, really sad, like we've heard me talk about before, and they're in a victim mindset, they're not going to make a payment. So how do I empower them? How do I get them out of those spaces where I know they're not going to really take action on something? If I'm coaching somebody, if I'm coaching an employee or I'm coaching a client, how do I get them out of an emotional state and an energy state that doesn't serve them? The trick to a lot of social awareness, being aware of other people's cues and understandings, is to shut up. Is to shut up and listen. So we're going to maneuver into key conversation skills that I teach every salesperson, every executive, anyone I work with, that I think will immediately help you today. And we're going to practice a little bit here shortly, right? So first and foremost, curious questions, all right? Curious questions are a very simple formula that I use with all my salespeople. Take something that you heard and add a what, how, or why. So let me pick someone from the crowd. Laura were to tell me, Laura, what's your favorite color?
Purple.
Purple. Purple's your favorite color. Why is it your favorite color?
It was the color my room was painted when I was a child.
Oh, wow. So it was the color your room was painted when you were a young child. How big was the room?
It was a normal, average sized bedroom.
Normal size bedroom? Where did you grow up?
Miami.
Grow up in Miami. Okay. And are you still there, or are you living somewhere else?
No, I live in Palm Beach now. Still in
You live in
Florida.
Palm Beach. So I can just keep being curious once I get the conversation started, I can just keep pulling from whatever you give me to ask another question, right?
Right.
And as a salesperson and as a leader and as an executive, half the time I joke with most of the salespeople, the smartest thing you can do is be the dumbest person in the room. Just ask a lot of questions, right? I can just keep asking questions and asking questions and asking questions and dig into what's going on with somebody, and I'll learn a lot of really cool things.
And people love to talk about themselves.
People love to talk about themselves, right? The number one fastest rapport and trust building technique you can use is active listening. Active listening. It's been proven time and time again. People love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about the things that are going on with them. Bringing back some of the things we've talked about before, right? Emotional validation, label emotions someone presents with, right? So if your client is really sad and they just told you something really devastating, their cat died, right? Especially if you're in a sales conversation or any other sort of business transaction, don't say, I'm so sorry you're going through that. Because what did we just do there? Very subtly, not intentionally. None of you are intentionally doing this, but it's a very subtle thing. Anyone want to guess?
You felt bad for them, like you made them feel worse.
Made them feel worse, kind of. What else? What else are we doing?
You're putting them off. You're not dealing with their emotions. You're not dealing with the actuality. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Let's get on with the business transaction.
Okay, yeah, getting not kind of being dismissive. What else?
Maybe anchoring that negative feeling to you.
Definitely anchoring that negative feeling. What else?
It's kind of a conversation ender. It doesn't really invite the person to say more.
All of you are correct. All these things lead to it, but one of the big things that it does is it passes a judgment. Right? I'm so sorry for you, you poor, pitiful little creature. Now you're not saying that, but that's what they're connecting with underneath here in the back of their brain. And because we're in a social situation, to Dan's point, guess what they're going to anchor on? Because they feel like the social pressure, they're going to say, oh, well, yeah, I know, thank you. Now we're anchored in this sad feeling, in this victim mindset, right? Because I feel uncomfortable, because we've made this about me. So emotional validation and labeling emotion is much easier to continue the conversation, right? So I can use that and partner that with a curious question. When someone says, my cat just died, it's been really awful, the kids have been really upset, and you say, that sounds like that just sounds like it must be a nightmare. How have you been doing? Or you don't even have to add the question. You can say that sounds like that must have been really difficult. By labeling the emotion, not only did I de-intensify what they're feeling, especially if it's a really negative emotion, but I allow them to still be the hero in their story. Whatever story they're telling themselves, they still have the chance to be a hero. They can sit there and say, it has been difficult, but we're getting by. Way more empowering, right?
Yep.
It's subtle, it's simple. I know you're sitting here going, is that really going to help? It will. It almost certainly will. Strive for 5. All right. If you want to get really good in conversation and sales, try and drill 5 questions deep on any one topic thread. So if I was to keep the conversation going with Laura, I might keep asking about her house, where she lives, where she grew up, all those things. I might keep going further and further and further until I found something new. What people are very cognizant of in conversations is if you're just running across the rooftops and you're jumping from one topic to one topic to one topic to one topic to one topic, we all know that one person we've networked with that's not really interested in us and they're just kind of jumping around from topic to topic. Do we feel really connected to that person?
No, it seems disingenuous.
It seems disingenuous. But if I sit here and I'm really drilling down in there with you, you feel much more connected to me. You're really taking an interest in my life. The next one is FORD. Some of you have heard me say this before, right? This is an acronym. If you're struggling to kind of find things to talk about, family, occupation, recreation, dreams, and goals. These are tied to our identities. They're deeply tied to our identities. And if you want someone to talk forever about themselves, just keep floating through these things. I've been to networking events before where I've said very little about myself, and I've just constantly used these techniques, questions, validating, drilling down into things, drilling down into their family, drilling down into their occupation. What do they do for work? How long have they been doing that? And people will be like, God, that James, he is just such a nice guy. He is so wonderful. Like, I feel like I just know him so well. And I'm like, you don't know anything about me. But it's fine. That's what I want. I want them to feel comfortable with me because it's going to make really strong relationships. Last little tidbit for you for when you're trying to improve your conversation. Listen first. What I mean by that, listen for emotional language, metaphors, and uncommon words. We do not experience reality. We experience the reality we focus on. And what we focus on, we use with words, right? The words we put to it are very, very intentional. So when someone says, I was just really, really mad with my kids about the way they did this thing, I might use a curious question. And I say, when you said you were mad, what made you so mad? Because there's a lot of intensity around that. There's a lot of pain and or pleasure around the words that they're using. I just felt like I was stabbed in the back. When you say you felt stabbed in the back, what do you mean by that? Why would you say that? Right? Now I can strive for 5. I can dig deep. I can start finding out what that's really related to. All right. Can anyone see 1 or 2 of these that they're going to use like right away?
Strive for 5.
Strive for 5.
Also coin.
Coin. Curiosity beats assumption every time.
Yeah, I love the coin.
Yeah, very strong. People use that one all the time. People want to feel felt. I know that sounds really like silly, but at the end of the day, people want to feel like someone is connecting with them. If you dominate the conversation, if it's just you talking, they start to recede back into their mind. They stop listening. They glaze over. If you've got kids, you know what I'm talking about when you're talking to them, and they start to stop listening. But if you ask questions, you hijack their conversation, and they have to engage with you, right? And they can't check out. And people feel really, really comfortable talking about things that really matter to them.
How do you label the emotion someone presents in the emotional validation idea?
For what?
Well, at just number 2 on there says emotional validation. Label the emotion someone presents. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So let's say I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're really, really excited about this project they have, right? Or their kids are going to college. I'm gonna say that sounds really, really exciting. That looks really, really that looks like a really exciting like event or a really happy time that you're doing. Labeling it allows them to feel their emotions. Most of the time, people are running around not aware of the feelings that they have. So by pointing it out, you build a lot of connection with that person very quickly, and they get to feel it. They still get to own it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's really just calling it out. Man, that sounds like that would have been really, really difficult. It
It's
has
like
been
with the
really.
cat.
Yeah.
I think as an attorney, a lot of times you'll find yourself in fix-it mode where you're going through the checklist of here's the issues, here's what we can do about it. Is there a better, I think sometimes you don't realize you're doing it like the bedside manner, but how do you transition that to make it an emotional connection? Do you have any recommendations for that, or
So for my attorneys and for any of my people who do consultations, let's say you have a 60-minute window to talk to this person. Spend the first 30 minutes talking about nothing about you. I want you to spend the first 30 minutes just asking them questions about their scenario, what's going on with them, and really understand them. Because the longer you ask questions, the longer you active listen, the better trust is built, the more comfort that's built, right? And it allows you to take people, like, to have really deep, honest conversations. You get a lot deeper in your conversations than you ever expected you could. And then when you start talking about what you offer and how you do it, they're going to be locked in, right? Especially when we're talking about the problem we're trying to solve. 30 minutes.
So try to do it on the front end then.
Yes. Sit on your hands. All right. Have had attorneys I tell, sit on your hands so that
Right.
you don't talk on these calls. Right. As a reminder. When it comes to social awareness, and if you're working with team members or people that are more on the neurodivergent side, really focus on helping them get clarity, like encouraging them to be curious, like to not make assumptions. That can be like, and sometimes back when I was with a very large tech company training people all across the globe, for when we were in those training scenarios and people were struggling because they had one, we were teaching in a very neurotypical way. I would create sort of curiosity cheat sheets, and I would just like put them up and have them pasted next to their computers so that when they didn't understand what was going on, they could look at it and be like, oh, I should ask that question, right? A lot of externalizing tools can be really helpful for those people on your team. All right. So before I hand this over to Fabio to break you up and have you do some networking and practice some of these skills that I hope you'll practice as you talk to one another, I would like to hear some takeaways. What are some things you're going to take away, use right away, either in our next session, in the next thing we're about to do here, or something at work? Or I'm a complete failure and nobody has anything to take away.
I'm going to
okay.
listen
my
first
take-
more.
Sorry. One at a time.
I was going to say I would listen first more, and try to work the strive for 5 in and get a little deeper on the questions.
Love it. Who else?
Yeah, that was my takeaway as well, in terms of just asking more questions, being more intentional in learning about that individual, and empathizing with what might be what might be taking place in their life, so that there is that sense of connection. And I love the way when you came out and you said, man, that person, I love that guy, James, he's just such a great guy, but he knows nothing about you. It's only because you've asked so many questions and really discovered more about him than he did about you. And so that just creates that sense of connection.
Yeah. To follow up with that story before about where I took the guy out to coffee and he hated me and hated my guts. We did have coffee, and I used basically all 5 of these things to really let him vent. We were supposed to be a 30-minute coffee meeting. I probably spoke for no more than 20 minutes, but in 2.5 hours, he felt so connected with me that he became one of my best supporters in the community and helped us get past a lot of really important projects. And I got him to volunteer in a lot of different ways. Right. So that's when we talk about how quickly this stuff can work. It's that emotional regulation, that self-management, being able to not take things personally, be able to understand what people are going through, and really help build relationships and bridge across where people are struggling, using these things to just get curious, just get clear with people. Anyone else? Like one more takeaway. And thank you for Dan, Jeffrey, anyone else that's been participating. I appreciate it.
I think this was terrific, and I'm going to make sure that it's incorporated into our sales training for the entire team so that all of my, new team members can go ahead and follow this. And hopefully this will help their empathy scores that we're getting back from sales and intake, because I think some of those
Awesome.
need to be improved. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Wonderful. All right. Well, let's do it. All right, let's partner up and let's have some conversations. Let's get some networking on. So I'm going to hand it over to Fabio and let him partner you all up and have some fun. Talk to each other. Learn about each other. It'll be fun because all of you are going to try not to. You're going to keep trying to play ping pong. Everyone's going to try and turn it over to the other person. So it'll be a lot of fun. I'll hang out here for a little bit and answer any questions if people have things they want to talk about.
Oh, and I see Fabio put different QR codes on here on the screen before we go into breakout rooms. So if you liked everything, or if you feel like it, please drop us a review. That's the first code. And then we have 2 other Facebook networking groups, Profitable Attorney Connections for attorneys only, or Profitable Connections for all different types of business owners. And we're trying to get together monthly for these types of events. We have an in-person Boca Raton event, an in-person Fort Lauderdale event, these virtual events monthly, and come January, we're launching Palm Beach and Dade County. So we should have those, separately as well. And we'll talk about maybe some other ones next year. But if you can, we'd love a review. And Fabio and the marketing team would be happy to reciprocate. And Fabio, do you want to break us out?
Yeah, I'm gonna start breaking you guys out now. If you guys want, it's a good idea just to take a picture of the screen because there's 3 QR codes. You guys can scan them individually whenever you get the chance. And the Facebook groups are a good opportunity to send referrals, and we also promote our events on there as well, so you guys can get a heads up before every event.
And for the people who missed or were in and out, like I know Becky said she's been on and off, Fabio is going to go ahead and send an email with the recording, and we're going to link it to our business Facebook page. And I think this went live on YouTube as well.
Yep. All right.
And if you want to share it with anyone you know, feel free to do so.
Okay, I'm gonna start breaking you guys out now.
Bailey, is the Profitable Connections one, is that a Facebook link?
That's a Facebook link, correct, for a Facebook group.
I have to figure out my Facebook login from many, many, many moons ago. Hey, James.
Yes, sir.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Just like it's spelled. Chickerdonis. Right? Supposedly means burnt chicken in Greek.
And could you say it once more?
Chickerdonis.
Chickerdonis. Okay. I was only off by about 20 syllables, I think.
It's okay. It took me till the 3rd grade to learn to spell my own last name. All right. It was pretty chaotic there for a little while.
So how'd you get into doing this, James?
Get into doing this, like my career, or
well, doing the the emotional intelligence training as per se.